2 chords is all you need to make this.
Guys, I know you hear this a lot, but today I'm really giving out the keys, no gatekeeping. You're going to learn how to make these Travis Scott, Don Toliver, Mike Dean, James Blake type progressions with 2 chords, and you're going to understand how they go together. And you're going to be able to use this in your samples to open up new ways of thinking and take your samples up a level. I guarantee that. So stay tuned to the end, because I'm going to give you so many different ways and tips and techniques. It's so packed with information today. So stay tuned. Rewatch. I'm B-Sticks. Go follow me on Instagram at B-Sticks Production. Cop some of my free mini kits. The link is down there. Let's get into the theory right now.
So we've got 2 chords, and I want to talk about keys, but I'm not going to talk about keys just yet because I don't want to confuse you. We're going to keep this really simple, and you're going to understand how you can use this special formula to create Travis Scott, Don Toliver type progressions really easily, and also know which notes you can use melody wise to really enhance these melodies and bring them to life. We start with an A minor triad, just building it with an A, a C and an E. We can add one more note, the minor 7th, by again just adding a note, 2 notes under our root and raising it up an octave. We've got a minor 7th there, and then if we build a major 7th a half step away from the root of the chord before, so if we build an A sharp or B flat major chord here, we're just going to build it with these 3 notes, and we're going to add one more note which just underneath our root, we've got a note there, and we raise that up. And usually if we saw these 2 chords, we'd probably think that we're in the key of F major and we have a 3-4 progression, and that would mean that we could use the F major or D minor, which is the relative minor, scales to create a top line melody on the top of this. And sometimes we'd also find maybe a G minor chord, which would be the 2 chord in F major, and we might find these 3 chords together. We could make nice melodies and it would be great. However, if we want to darken things up, we need to think about this in a slightly different way. I want you to think about this A minor as our root now, and I want you to think of this chord here, the 2nd chord, as our 2 chord. And what we've done by doing that is we've created an A Phrygian progression, a modal progression, which you hear all the time in Tame Impala, Travis Scott, Don Toliver, those kind of artists there. And the reason that this is cool is that we can use an A Phrygian scale to create melodies, and James Blake does this all the time. It's like his magic kind of secret sauce to creating interesting dark melodies. Now let's just listen to the A Phrygian scale on its own here. It has a very different quality to just your normal minor scale or major scale, and this is where the magic is, where these 2 notes are really close together, our 1 and our 2 here, and you're just recontextualizing these 2 chords. If I now put this melody underneath those 2 chords, you can hear how they rub together really interestingly. But the formula that you just need to remember is that if you take any minor chord, build a major chord a half step away, and then think about using the root note of the 2nd chord in your melodies, and you're going to be able to create really interesting top line melodies that sound a bit different from your usual just 3-4 progression. So this is a 1-2 progression in A Phrygian, and we can just transpose this up and down the keyboard. A good example of using this Phrygian is Skeletons by Travis, where Tame Impala is using Phrygian mode to its full advantage melodically, and yeah, play around with it, see what you can come up with. So this sample is actually really simple. There's a couple of elements, but again, like, comes together really nicely. Again, if you listen to some James Blake, you're going to hear mainly it's just his voice with reverb and then you've got piano, he loves piano, or you may have some other ambient pads, and then maybe like a really, really low sub bass. I kind of went for that as my inspiration point here, and obviously we had to raise the whole sample by 2 semitones. It's always 2, right? Shout out to Lifestyle did it. So we take this off, and we are left with our chords here, and I actually programmed this in a really friendly to play key for piano. It's in F Phrygian, if you remember what we just said. So that we're going from 1 to 2 in F Phrygian. So we're going from an F minor chord to a F sharp major chord. And the way that I played this out, I was thinking about arpeggiating the chords, and I was thinking melody the whole time when I was playing this piano line. If I just play this soloed out for you here. Thinking melody the whole time. I'm just raising up through that scale, giving you that kind of mysterious feeling there. Everything that I wanted to do here was going to add to that dark kind of ambient moody type feel, type flavor. I pretty much kept these 2 chords throughout all the sections of the sample, and you could really divide this into 3 sections. At bar 9 I just changed the rhythm up that I played these chords, and the voicing slightly, but realistically they are still just an F minor or some kind of F minor chord going to a F sharp major chord. That F minor. See how I'm using the notes in the scale and in the chords here to play a melody, and there's this note that I'm keeping constant. This F note almost always is on top. I'm just varying up with this G occasionally, so that kind of, that's keeping that tone throughout, and it just again grounds us in that section. In the first section I added a pad where I was just holding out these chords, but not the full chords, just slight voicings of them, and this sound I went for was just in the sky keys, and again it's called Hymn, because again there's something kind of churchy and ethereal about this, so I wanted a almost choir like feel to it. Notes close together. Any one of these stems could be used, you know, on its own to create something moody, like a beat in itself, and that's how I always like to think, that each part adds something. So I only use a few parts in my samples, but each one has to have its own place. I'm not putting anything there that's not deliberate. So I accentuated this melody here. Again, adding little notes just to really bring out the melody. Listen to these 2 together. To really bring out the melody here. And then I added a vocal that I recorded through my Avalon and on my Neumann mic. It just sounds like this, and I had to put effects on there because I'm not a singer. You can think about these as like the first chord that you play. If you're using auto-tune here, you can just go for, like, call it F minor, so that first chord. So that's a tip for you as well. If you're doing A, you'd have an A minor, and then you'd have a B flat major 7th like we looked at, and you could choose A minor as your key in auto tune, and it would work with whatever you sung in. So here's my melody. Mysterious. Bass line, I just kept it simple, going between the 2 notes. Here's my growler bass, which is just in Omnisphere. I added a little percussive tap, which I panned slightly to the left, and stuck a lot of reverb on that just to wash it out and give it that ambient type feel, and then some vinyl crackle just for texture. That made the first section of the sample. For the second section, I just added in this lead sound, and I did this little trick. You've seen that I changed the rhythm up from bar 9 of the chords, and I played pads with a little bit more information in, but just this note on top, I'm just adding more tension. Everything is tension related here. And then I added a lead sound. I introduced this sound, and I used the London Rain technique where I brought in this light grass patch here. I'm holding this all the way through into the next section, which makes makes the whole sample feel less loopy and more like an actual piece of music, where I'm not just, you know, on 8 bars, I'm bringing in a new sound on 8 bars. Like, it feels more alive, more organic. So that's a great tip for you there. And then I just brought in this Opus East West Choir. Again, voicings I thought worked. You can see my on the bottom here, I'm just playing these intervals here and then these little paths on the top, and I brought the bass back in, and that is pretty much the whole sample. So guys, if you've got anything out of this, like and subscribe. Go follow me on Instagram at bsticks production and click the link up in the top corner for more sample source.